Welcome to All Things Real Estate on Full Service Radio, 830 WCRN. Now, here's your hosts, Gary Kelley and Brad Avergon.
Welcome to All Things Real Estate on Sunday, 8:30 in the morning. On 8:30 a.m., I'm Gary Kelley with RE/MAX Executive Realty, and I am joined, as always, by the illustrious
Brad Avergon with Envision Bank and Mortgage.
That doesn't sound illustrious.
It doesn't.
Why don't you try that again?
It's Brad Avergon with the fantastic Envision Bank and Mortgage coming semi-live to you.
Coming to you from the crypt.
From the crypt. Live from my office, my home office. How are you, Gary?
I'm good, Brad. So I don't want to talk about COVID coming back.
Okay.
I don't want to talk about Delta. I don't want to talk about Epsilon. I don't want to talk about any of that stuff. I want to share a story of something that actually happened recently.
Share away.
So I was at the hardware store. Now, I like going to the hardware store. And one of the things about going to the hardware store for me is that I actually go in, pick up what I want, and then I take off. Now, in a perfect world, I would go in and do what you do at a grocery store. I'd go in, I'd walk up and down the aisles and all that stuff. And that tends not to happen. It tends to be surgical strike. Go in, get what I need, and then out I go. So with that said, I'm standing in the hardware store and I get a call from a friend of mine. And the friend of mine is saying, "Can you bring home a mop?" I'm like, okay, that sounds good. Why are we bringing home a mop? And my question was not anything more than, what are you going to use the mop for? She's been doing some painting at her home, and I didn't know if she was doing some, cleanup, or if, she wanted to do the floor. I mean, in my mind, there's different sponges you would use for that. And she says, "Oh, no, the dishwasher sprang a leak." Okay. I said, "I'm not going to bring home a sponge. I'm going to bring home a shop vac, because you're in a hardware store. You got to bring home power equipment. Always." This was on July 3rd. The dishwasher, indeed, the solenoid inside had decided that it would just keep filling the dishwasher. My friend had the wherewithal, the sense, the knowledge to say, I'm going to turn off the valve down in the basement where the water comes into the house. Alas, the valve doesn't work. It just spins. Also turns out, we find out subsequently, that the valve outside also just spins. So she had really no way to stop water coming in. And we at this point, it's July 3rd, trying to find an appliance repair person to talk to. That's a challenge. Trying to find a plumber. We actually did find a guy to talk to, and he was very helpful. He walked us through what to do to get that solenoid to shut, and that stopped the water.
What was the answer to that? I'm curious myself. I was thinking, could you shut the power off and would that stop the pump to the dishwasher, throw the circuit breaker?
Well, I don't know about that. It wasn't a pump. It was just when the solenoid's open, water came in. So you had to get the solenoid to close. There was subsequently someone said the same thing. Just turn the power off to it. It'll shut off the solenoid. But the solenoid wasn't going on. He had us move through. This was a vintage early 70s dishwasher. And he had us move through the different settings on it until it truly did stop. I had tried moving through the settings early in the process to see if I could pump the water out, and that just didn't work. So we used the shop vac. We filled it 3 times. We happened to have a dehumidifier in the house anyway, so that was running. So we let that go. The next day, it's still sopping wet. and just, you walk on the carpet. It's a split entry. So the dishwasher's up on the top level. You walk down to the lower level, and you're spongy in the water. There's just no question about it. So we actually contacted our insurance agent. I sent a quick text that my friend and I have the same insurance agent, and I sent a quick text to Jamie Carrot, Ripple Effect Insurance. There's a little plug, and said, if you have a minute, can you talk? And like 2 minutes later, she called back. We described the problem to her, and she says, here's the number you call Travelers, call them up, and let's get this thing going. So we called Travelers. They had a relationship with ServPro. And on the 4th of July at this point, you had 3 people out from ServPro, 2 trucks. They started to, what they did was basically vacuum up as much water as they could with their big truck mounted unit. And then they went on and put in a dehumidifier, air movers, all that stuff. And then came back the following week and started to rip the place apart. And that's kind of where I end up, is they rip the place apart. It's like you see in the hurricane movies. They start taking down any sheetrock that's wet. They have meters and gauges, and it's just gone. And they do a very nice job doing it, but they don't put it back together again. And that is, to me, one of the bigger nuisances. And so what has started as oh my goodness, the dishwasher failed, has now become you get the money from the insurance company to put it back together, but it is not a case of you're going to have the gold handled fixtures. This is a case of they clearly will pay for ServPro, and they will pay for some repair, but they're down at the microscopic level of carpet saying, well, this carpet, it's a year old. You probably could find it again, and then we'll piece it in. And, piecing in carpet, just, it's not the thing to do. So you start to talk to contractors, and eventually, Brad, I will get around to letting you talk. You start to talk to contractors, and they're all in the mode of, well, we can fix this, but what are you going to do about your trim? Well, we were painting the trim. Sue was painting her trim. No, you got to pull the trim out. And so it becomes a case of you're doing more demolition. And then it becomes, well, hold it. If you're pulling this out, what kind of flooring are you going to put back in? Are you going to replace carpeting? One of the bathrooms had carpet. I don't know why people would put carpet in a bathroom, but this one had carpet in the bathroom. It just doesn't make sense to me, but it was there. So you pull that out. What are you going to put down in its place? And oh, by the way, if you're going to replace that, shouldn't you replace the toilet? Yeah, you're going to put in something that's a comfort height as opposed to the 1960s vintage. And then it goes on from there. If you're going to do that, what about the trim around the windows? And by the way, if you're going to replace the windows, the house was built in the 60s. The windows are all single pane, probably should be replaced. It's probably time to do the windows. So you end up with a renovation that I contend would have happened anyway over time. I contend would have happened over a number of years, but it's kind of happening now with a ServPro-led demolition effort. And the question becomes, how do you pay for this stuff? Because it's not going to be a small bill. I'm guessing it will be kissing $100,000 when it's all said and done. It's my guess. Windows, flooring. Turns out that there's a wall on the place. It's a split. Should like to take the wall down. Okay, that makes sense. But you certainly want to do that now before you piece in new flooring. So, Brad, how do people pay for that stuff?
Well, it's a great question, Gary. And I think your story is a really important one, because I think a lot of people don't realize, they think they get a home and they can, even if they buy the home within that same year, something perpetually will go wrong. Now, it's not always something as drastic as what your friend went through, but it is definitely it's one of the foundations that I try to advise my clients on, which is do not put all your money into your equity in your home, because eventually the water heater will go, the furnace may go, the air conditioning may go. Appliances wear out, and they wear out faster than they used to. They used to be designed to go 10, 20 years. Now you're lucky you get 3 to 5 years out of an appliance. And so you have to be prepared to do that. So, one of the things that I advise clients to do is to, number one, when they're buying a property, don't put all your equity into that property. Make sure you leave in addition to that emergency money, some money for things that are going to be that you foresee are going to be coming along. I know when you show people homes, you say, well, let's look at the age of the appliances and let's factor in at some point you're going to need funds to replace the furnace, air conditioning, whatever the case may be, dishwasher, so forth and so on. But what you're talking about is the unexpected, right? What happens when something goes and it's major? There's really only 2 ways to address that. Well, actually, there's more than 2. The 2 easy ways are, one is when you buy a home, you leverage it to the point that you've got a very comfortable stash of liquid reserves aside. You've got money, tens of thousands of dollars available to you to handle some minor things. When it's a major thing like that, the only way that I can think of is if you've put a decent down payment down, oftentimes you can get an equity line as soon as you buy that property. As soon as you're done closing, I don't recommend getting it while you're purchasing, because it changes what's called the combined loan to value, or CLTV, and that can affect pricing. But the day after you close, you can go back and get an equity line on a property. Up to 80% is the standard, and on a case-by-case basis, you go up to 90% of the value of the property. And what that is it's a line of credit. Think of it as a credit card attached to your house that you don't really pay any interest on it until you use it. But if you need it, as in the case of your friend, it's simply taking out that checkbook and being able to write checks for whatever you need for major things.
So Brad, why don't you hold that thought for a second? I think we need to pay some bills.
Okay.
We want to thank everyone for tuning in on a Sunday morning to WCRN AM 830. I'm Gary Kelley with Brad Avergon. We're going to take a break now, and then we're going to come back and continue the conversation about how do you fund major renovations, whether they're foreseen or not.
You've been listening to All Things Real Estate on Full Service Radio, 830 WCRN.